Hollywood was startled in 2013 when Richard Dean Anderson turned down proposals for $30 million. He was just 63. His career was still thriving. The studios were pleading for Anderson to return, but he had a secret. According to people close to Anderson, he has been hiding a sinister secret about the business for many years. He was so severely traumatized by something that occurred during his MacGyver years that he has never spoken it in public. He chose silence over fame because of what Hollywood insiders did to him. On a chilly January day in 1950, Richard Dean Anderson was born. In Dawson Creek, British Columbia, his mother had just given birth to him. However, they packed up the baby and entered the U.S. within 3 days. Minneapolis, Minnesota, became their new home, where Richard, the oldest of 4 brothers, would grow up. Stuart, his father, was more than just a teacher. He played jazz bass at night and taught English and drama during the day. Jocelyn, his mother, was a talented painter and sculptor. Stage lights, music, and art were all a part of Richard's universe from the start. Their home's walls frequently reverberated with the scent of paint and jazz. And when he was a young boy, he would discreetly watch his father practice plays in the back of high school theaters. It resonated with him after he witnessed actors using Twinkies as birthday cake during a practice. He made the decision to pursue any job that offered free Twinkies. He was raised in the suburb of Roseville, where ice hockey and daydreaming were his 2 main interests. He had an almost obsessive devotion for the sport. He was referred to as a hockey nut. And he was excellent. Even hockey veteran Stan Mikita commended his abilities. At the age of 16, Richard's hopes of becoming a professional athlete were dashed. He first suffered a severe gaming collision that fractured one arm. Then he broke the other 3 weeks later. The second break was so severe that he needed surgery with pins and plates and spent 3 months in the hospital. Doctors said he might never be able to move again. At the moment, actual teams were scouting him. It was more than simply pain to have everything torn away like that. It was a loss of identity. He was a hockey player. And it was gone now. He fell into a deep depression. The hospital stay seemed to go on forever. And more painful than the ache in his bones was the stillness of never being able to skate again. But in that silence, something surprising started to develop. He began to listen to his father's school plays more intently. He became a member of drama clubs. His arms were still in casts when he performed. He had something to cling to when everything else had vanished: acting. A fire that would never die out was ignited somewhere in the midst of those little plays. Richard had a difficult upbringing. There wasn't much for his family. The necessities were hardly met by his father's salary. The music gigs were helpful at times. They didn't always. The 4 lads needed to help out. Newspapers were delivered by Richard. He understood the importance of cherishing each dollar. He also learned how to make the most of what little he had, such as when he was 10 years old and attempted to cycle from Minneapolis to Duluth. It is 100 miles away. He kept the entire scheme from his parents. He simply mounted his bike and rode off. He reached 50 miles, halfway, before his tiny body failed him. It didn't feel like failure, even though he had to go back. He had the courage to undertake something that most adults wouldn't dare, even at the age of 10. His desire for risk only increased at the age of 17. He started riding a bicycle across the country. He made the 5,600-mile journey from Minnesota to Alaska via Canada. He worked alone for the last 33 days. Just him, a bike, and a harsh combination of weather and mountains, no team, no car following him. He had been stranded in a whiteout during a frightening snowstorm earlier that year in Taos, New Mexico, with winds of 105 miles per hour. He lived. And he continued to strive for more in some way. He acquired scuba diving skills. He acquired motorbike riding skills. He purchased 4 of them. A Harley-Davidson is among them. He liked jumping over school rooftops. He would get up smiling after crashing a motocross bike. He once needed stitches when he fell off a board and hurt his head. He was not slowed down by it. He once made the decision to live in an igloo and set a world record during one of Minnesota's harsh winters. He constructed it himself. He spent 3 days there. He almost died of cold. However, he saw that as simply another obstacle. He had many spectacular stunts and near misses during his adolescence. Pain did not frighten him. He had no fear of failing. Standing motionless was what frightened him. When Richard Dean Anderson left Ohio University and relocated to Los Angeles in 1976, he was taking a big gamble. He only had a dream and a lot of uncertainty. There was no assurance that he would succeed. He did everything it required to live. Working with whales at a marine show was one of his most peculiar occupations. That work taught him how to manage pressure and remain composed in front of large crowds, but he also needed the money to pay his rent. He had previously honed his acting skills in the theaters of New York City. He was getting ready for something bigger with each odd job and every little stage. All of that changed in the spring of 1976. On General Hospital, he got his first significant break. He appeared in 611 episodes throughout his 5 years on the show, when he was cast as Dr. Jeff Weber. This occurred right before the show's July 26, 1976, extension from 30 to 45 minutes. The ratings quickly began to rise. General Hospital rose to the top of America's daytime drama rankings by 1979. And Anderson joined that wave. He co-starred with actors Stuart Damon and Denise Alexander. He was also more than just another soap actor by the time he left in 1981. Producers have begun to take notice of him. He didn't slow down after that. He played Brian Parker in the 1981 film Facts of Life, which came out immediately after General Hospital. Then he played Andy McFay on Today's FBI. And also appeared as Carter Randall on The Love Boat in 1982. These jobs weren't just any old jobs. They were all carefully selected. He was demonstrating his versatility beyond soap operas. His goal was to demonstrate range, and he succeeded. He gained skills and made contacts by working with many directors and crews. However, things did not turn out as planned. He had the lead in 2 CBS series from 1982 to 1984. His first role was Adam McFadden in 22 episodes of 7 Brides for 7 Brothers. Following that, he served for another 22 episodes as Lieutenant Simon Adams at Emerald Point NAS. Both programs were terminated after only 1 season. 2 enormous failures, 2 big possibilities. Such consecutive failures might ruin a career for a budding performer. However, Anderson continued. He observed. He discovered. He listened to the reactions of audiences. Then, the role that would alter everything arrived in 1985. Something odd occurred during his 1985 MacGyver audition. He arrived with his glasses on. He left them in place. He had no intention of impressing anyone or seeming cool. The producers were impressed by that raw, honest moment. They were not searching for your average action star. They were looking for an actual person. The part went to Anderson. Despite his lack of stunt expertise, he persuaded them to let him perform the majority of his own stunts. He was responsible for 70% of the perilous scenarios you witness. He was an advocate of doing things on his own. In real life, he and MacGyver both detested firearms. It was the ideal match. The program was a huge hit. MacGyver ran for 139 episodes between 1985 and 1992. Anderson became a television legend after performing in soap operas. He was making $1 million a season by 1990. However, it was when he secured producer credits for the subsequent seasons that he made the big money. This implied that he also received a cut from syndication. There was MacGyver everywhere. Because the show was intelligent and devoid of violence, parents adored it. Because it made science seem cool, kids adored it. The term MacGyver even turned into a verb. You MacGyvered something instead of fixing it. He revived the character in a Super Bowl commercial in 2006, 14 years after the show's conclusion. The persona has become so ingrained in popular culture. But there was a cost too. Success. Anderson stepped into a concealed hole in 1987 while filming a sprinting sequence over uneven terrain. His ankle wasn't merely twisted. His disc blew apart. His leg began to hurt. Despite his inability to walk correctly, he continued. He refused assistance and swallowed painkillers while filming episodes in excruciating pain for a year and a half. He had no desire for stunt doubles. The harm was genuine, but he didn't want to appear weak. Physicians warned about long-term nerve problems. At last, he gave in and underwent surgery. However, the agony never completely disappeared. For the remainder of the performance, he carried it with him. Anderson's own early years provided one of the most memorable scenes in MacGyver's debut episode. He enjoyed disassembling objects and creating new inventions as a child. The infamous paperclip bomb was born out of that behavior. The original script did not include it. It was directly from Anderson's recollections. In fact, he had constructed such things as a child. The pilot received a 10.9 rating when it aired. In other words, around 20 million people watched. At first, the network was let down, but that one scene became into a legend. Anderson began to be consulted by writers who wanted to know what kinds of innovations MacGyver could create. He molded the role rather than merely playing it. By 1991, he had succumbed to the show's pressure. On set, he passed out. Stress, dehydration, and complete fatigue caused him to faint. According to doctors, only 20% of his body was functional. He was exhausted. He requested permission to leave the studio. They refused, threatening to sue him for $18 million if he departed. There was no bluff in that number. He was stuck and had to continue filming despite his deteriorating health. Later on, he acknowledged that the show had consumed his life. Outside of it, nothing remained. In 1997, Richard Dean Anderson startled everyone at MGM by making a request that no actor had ever made before agreeing to star in Stargate SG-1. He was not interested in a full-time position. He insisted on working 3 days a week. That meant there would be no access from Friday until Sunday. All in order to be with his newborn daughter, Wiley, at home. The producers were incredulous. It seems crazy to rearrange the entire filming schedule of a show around one actor. However, his name alone could attract millions of viewers, and Anderson was fresh off one of the most popular shows of the late 1980s and early 1990s, MacGyver. Thus, MGM gave in. The transaction went to him. Even though he only worked part-time, he made $100,000 per episode. Somehow, that part-time agreement persisted for all 10 seasons. In the end, Anderson made appearances in 173 of the 214 episodes. In Hollywood, that 3-day contract became well known. No one else got away with it quite like him, but other performers began to ask for the same thing. Things became even more bizarre by 2001, when the show was in its 5th season. Anderson was now paid twice as much. His earnings per episode have increased to $200,000. Even though he was still only working 3 days a week, that amounted to $4.4 million every season. Stargate SG-1, which attracts over 2.5 million people each week, has emerged as sci-fi's crown jewel. The program was earning more than $100 million from syndication arrangements abroad. Anderson and Amanda would receive up to $50,000 from fan conventions simply for sharing a panel. And because so many of his lines weren't even in the screenplay, the fans adored him. Anderson made up several of O'Neill's sardonic one-liners on the spot. He made about $30 million from the show alone over 10 seasons. Not to mention the residuals and reruns, which continue to generate revenue today. However, things weren't always easy. Something that occurred in 2004 completely altered Anderson's life. He hurt his knee during what should have been a straightforward running scenario while filming season 8. However, his foot landed incorrectly. He twisted his knee. The ligaments broke. It hurt immediately. He required months of rehabilitation and surgery. He was told bluntly by the doctors to continue performing strenuous sequences. He might become incapable of walking normally. Rather than dismissing him, the producers made a shrewd adjustment. Colonel O'Neill was elevated to Brigadier General, meaning he would primarily remain in his desk job. His action sequences were trimmed by over half. Although they were unaware of the reason, the fans saw that he was less active. Years passed before the truth was revealed. Anderson still limps a little bit today. Although the entire cost of the treatment exceeded $200,000, insurance paid for the majority of it. Nevertheless, it marked a sea change. He never again played a physically difficult part. In Season 4 of Double Jeopardy, Anderson helmed one of the show's most memorable episodes that year. Anderson added something unexpected to the sci-fi action episode, which was meant to be enjoyable. He choreographed the alien war sequences using his 15 years of amateur hockey experience. He examined tapes, studied NHL games, and drew alien clashes as if they were power plays on ice. It became intense. He insisted on retakes, which caused the show to go $300,000 over budget. 47 takes were needed for one fight sequence. Eventually, the stunt coordinator resigned. However, Anderson persisted. He had an obsession. He even worked on his fighting skills with the stunt guys while they were eating lunch. The episode set records when it aired. 3.1 million people watched. The season's highest-rated episode was this one. However, behind the scenes, Anderson was collapsing even as the show was reaching its zenith. He was discreetly battling a serious case of burnout in 2001, the year he was awarded the Saturn Award for Best Actor. Although his 3-day workweek may have seemed simple, each day began at 5 o'clock and ended at 7 o'clock. He didn't take any breaks. It was crushing pressure. It was ruining his health, he warned co-star Michael Shanks. Without medication, he was unable to sleep. In order to keep awake, he was consuming 8 to 10 cups of coffee each day. Fans witnessed a happy actor during his award speech, but backstage makeup professionals had to conceal the dark circles beneath his eyes. After Season 7, he was really considering leaving the program and was seeing a therapist twice a week. When he really dozed off during a live interview, that was the tipping point. MGM took over at that point. They slashed his publicity effort in half and hired a personal assistant. At the time, only Amanda Tapping was aware of the therapeutic sessions. Even though Anderson had been under a lot of pressure for years, he didn't hesitate to take chances with his career. He performed something wholly unexpected back in 1992. Through the Eyes of a Killer is a CBS thriller in which he starred. Fans accustomed to viewing him as the hero were taken aback when it aired on December 15. He played Ray Bolano this time. After having a brief affair with Lori, a contractor becomes a stalker. He won't let go when she attempts to break up with him. For fans who only knew him as the witty, compassionate MacGyver, the film was ominous, unsettling, and a major shock. The 94-minute film was shot in Vancouver and was based on the short story The Master Builder. The film didn't set any new records. On IMDb, a few hundred people gave it a rating of 5.9. However, it demonstrated that Anderson wasn't scared to reveal a much darker side of himself and venture outside of his comfort zone. In 2006, that same unafraid attitude reappeared, but this time it was all comedy. Anderson made an appearance in the April 9 episode of The Simpsons called Kiss Kiss, Bang Bangalore. Dan Castellaneta was the author of the episode. The actor that voiced Homer was also the one who had been as a guest star on Stargate SG-1 the previous year. In the episode, Anderson plays himself and encounters Selma and Patty, who are MacGyver acolytes. The fact that Anderson claims he never enjoyed playing MacGyver and only did it for the money astounds them and the audience. He is abducted, but he manages to get away by focusing sunlight with a contact lens. Through his ropes, burn. The traditional MacGyver. Then it becomes even more humorous. Anderson begs Patty and Selma to keep kidnapping him with new difficulties since he gets fixated on escape stunts. It was outstanding. Fans adored it when he lent into the ridiculousness and made fun of himself. It revealed a side of him that most people didn't anticipate. The reputation of Richard Dean Anderson as the man who refused to settle down has always existed. However, in 1992, a change occurred. It became public knowledge that he was seeing Katharina Witt, the well-known East German figure skater. She was not your average athlete. She was one of the most well-known figures in the world at the time and a four-time world champion. They were only together for 2 months. They were photographed together in March and April of 1992. Discussed endlessly in the media. Then all of a sudden it was over. Anderson acknowledged that the burden from all the attention became too much to bear when the separation occurred while Witt was still heavily involved in competition. People believed that he might have finally found a partner this time. But it ended as swiftly as it had begun. His most solid relationship prior to that took place in the 1980s. He was dating actress Cella Ward from 1983 to 1986. They first crossed paths while playing siblings on the set of a production. Almost instantly, the off-screen relationship became romantic. They began residing in West Hollywood, just a short distance apart, after Cella had recently relocated to Los Angeles. They lived like a true couple despite not being married. However, he had to work 15-hour days for his position on MacGyver, so they ended up becoming what he dubbed a weekend couple. According to Anderson, the relationship was lovely, but he was afraid of getting married. He dated Terry Hatcher from April 1991 until February 1993 after their breakup. Almost 2 years had passed, yet once more, there was no long-term commitment. Both partnerships terminated amicably. Nevertheless, it was well known throughout Hollywood that Anderson never got married. Then someone arrived who genuinely altered his life's rhythm. April Prose was her name. She wasn't a celebrity, she was a wardrobe stylist. When a mutual acquaintance first introduced them in 1996, she had low expectations. Anderson, in her opinion, was simply another actor who would never make a commitment. However, April called her mother after just one date to tell her that she had found the man she would spend the rest of her life with. They spent 7 years together. Their daughter, Wiley Quinn Anna Rose Anderson, was born on August 2, 1998. Anderson was 48. Although he had never been married, he was now a father. April and he created a life together, but he also didn't marry her. There was no resentment between them when they finally split up in 2003. Anderson claimed that his daughter was now his primary priority. However, a brief affair years before Wiley was born almost turned everything upside down. Anderson began dating Lara Flynn Boyle in 1995. Because of her part in Twin Peaks, she was one of the most talked about celebrities in Hollywood at the age of 25. They were unable to breathe because of the reporters. The subject of their 21-year age difference kept coming up. They were followed everywhere by tabloids. It seemed soul-crushing, according to Anderson, who had managed to maintain his privacy for the majority of his career. The headlines didn't reflect the quick conclusion of the relationship. He later claimed that it was at this point that he fully understood the potentially harmful effects of the spotlight. He then started to distance himself from public life. He made a significant choice when he began filming Stargate SG-1 in 1997. He relocated to Vancouver rather than remain in Los Angeles. He desired room. He desired silence. He desired seclusion. He avoided Hollywood parties and red carpets by spending 8 months of the year in Canada. He went hiking. He and his pals played hockey. And that piece took on even greater significance in 1998, when Wiley was born. His house in Vancouver turned into a haven where he could simply be a father. But Wiley's birth wasn't quiet. It was horrible. When she came out, she didn't breathe. She didn't cry. Anderson stood motionless, attempting to maintain his strength while the doctors raced to her aid. He started crying when they finally announced she was all right. He later claimed that it was the most stressful time in his life. It transformed him. Everything centered on her after that day. Anderson became a full-time single father in 2003 following his separation from April. He didn't voice any complaints. He accepted it. He assumed all parental responsibilities. Everything, feedings, diapers, etc. By 2017, he was still driving Wiley to school every morning and picking her up at the end of the day, even though he was in his late 60s. He stopped performing. He preferred peaceful days on his estate in Malibu to writing in sets. He even woke up at 3 in the morning. It was never a hassle to check on her. He stated she never wept for no cause. He never anticipated the impact of becoming a father at the age of 48. Wiley sobbed nearly every day for the first year of his life. He made an effort to remain composed when April first revealed her pregnancy. Before long, however, he was reading any parenting book he could get his hands on. For the delivery, he even enrolled in yoga preparation lessons. He was unable to take his eyes off his daughter. Once referred to as Hollywood's most attractive bachelor, the man now stayed at home, rejected calls, and simply held his child. Everyone was taken aback by the decision he took in 2013. He gave up. He fully abandoned the industry. He chose to stop chasing scripts and money at the age of 63, with Stargate behind him and MacGyver long gone. He didn't want to miss a moment as his daughter turned 15. His physique was worn out. The stunts had worn them down. Above all, though, he didn't want to make the same mistakes twice. He had once been told he was never home by people like Terry Hatcher. He wished to prevent his daughter from saying the same thing. He rejected around $23 million offers from Netflix between 2023 and 2025, including $15 million for a documentary on his life. He declined because he didn't want his life to be reduced to mere content. 5 episodes of Stargate were offered by Disney for $5 million. For a single episode of the MacGyver reboot, Paramount offered $3 million. He didn't respond at all. No actor in Hollywood history has declined more offers, more money, and more notoriety than Richard Dean Anderson, according to a news outlet. He didn't regret it, though. He claimed that the reboot didn't accurately reflect MacGyver's genuine self. Fake nostalgia didn't appeal to him. He only agreed to things that aligned with his beliefs. And there were fewer and fewer of those. Anderson stunned fans once more in May 2025 when attending a convention in London. He made no mention of fame. He did not commend the sector. He referred to Hollywood as a machine that kills souls. He claimed that it simply worried about money and never longer cared about people. The fans were taken aback. Although Anderson had always been kind and endearing in public, he didn't hold back this time. He became the event's emotional focal point after abruptly replacing Amanda Tapping. The tickets were completely sold out. People wept. Stardom was no longer something he sold. He was being honest. Anderson, now 75, has a peaceful life in Malibu. It is estimated that he is worth $30 million. The value of his house alone is $9.5 million, and he pays $120,000 in property taxes annually. But luxury isn't his main concern. He collaborates with environmental organizations. He assists in the battle against illegal whaling and is a member of the Sea Shepherd Conservation Society's advisory board. He is in favor of youth initiatives. He only goes to 3 fan events annually. Peace is now the focus of his life. To go away, he didn't retire. To be there, he retired. He preferred quiet to commotion, the spotlight to everyday life, and most importantly, fatherhood to fame.